Chief Boone.
Present.
Shalondra Birch. Terry Burnside. Sharon Draper. Allison Galvin.
Present.
Nina Gugis.
Present.
Nikolai Greaves. Lorene King. Chief Marion.
Here.
Megan Nguyen.
Here.
Tyson Parks. Karen Wilson.
Here.
Janice Segato. Andre, we have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Can you proceed with reading the governor's statement, please?
Yes, in accordance with Governor J.B. Pritzker's Executive Orders 2020-07 and 2020-39, stated that provisions of the Open Meeting Act are suspended to include allowing members of a public body to be physically present during a meeting, as well as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's recommendation of social distancing of at least 6 feet between persons. City Hall is only open to the public with capacity and social distancing restrictions Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. To fulfill the requirements and recommendations and to comply with the Open Meeting Act for the Advisory Committee on Police Community Relations that meets at 5:30, the public may email comments no more than 75 words to me by 4 p.m. September 9th, 2020. The notice and agenda are posted on the city's website.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate that. At this time, I would like to seek a motion to approve the minutes from our August meeting.
This is Lorene. I move we approve.
Thank you, Ms. King.
This is Nina. I second.
Thank you, Nina. We'll go ahead and do our roll call for voting now.
Andre.
Yay.
Chief Boone.
Yeah.
Allison Galvin.
Yay.
Nina Gugis.
Yay.
Chief Marion.
Yes.
Megan Nguyen.
Aye.
Karen Wilson.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello. Sorry to interrupt, but I might have missed my name being called. Shalondra Birch is here also.
Okay, sorry, I did miss you. Shalondra Birch. Okay.
All right, thank you, Slandra. Appreciate it. Well, welcome everyone. I hope everyone is doing well on this rainy Peoria day. I'm excited for today's meeting. We have a special guest, and so without further ado, we can go ahead and go into old business. This has been something that's been on the agenda for a while. We've wanting to have a visit from the Department of Justice to just provide us some additional context. I think it's very important to know where you want to go. You got to know where you came from. And so just to talk about, the origin of this committee, and then maybe just some best practices and just hearing from a subject matter expert, I think will be very important. So without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Kenneth Bergeron. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to come and speak with us, sir. So the floor is now yours. We would love to be able to ask you any questions that we may have, but let's let Mr. Bergeron get through, whatever he wants to tell us first, and then we will field any questions as time permits, but I know he has to get off the call at 6. So at this time, I'm going to yield to you, sir, and we appreciate you being here today.
And Andre and everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very
yes, sir.
Good. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate this, and circling back to Peoria from our Peoria mediation agreement and the outgrowth from it created the Police Advisory Commission that you have here now. I'm always excited about these instruments of government, and particularly PRCs or PCRs, because they have an opportunity to create a lot of public and civic engagement. To that extent, I know, Andre, first off, I'm going to ask that you be super careful while I'm talking, while you're driving. I know that we spoke, but for the sake of those who didn't hear our conversation, it probably, to set some context, let me ask everyone if you are, your assessment about the current state of your PRC, how it's functioning, and what your needs might be. And then that would give me a starting point. Briefly, thank you. Anyone? Are you effective? Are you doing a good job? Do you think you can do better?
I think that sorry, my name is Allison Galvin. And I think that we could do better. I've just started, just from hearing comments from other members about how, we really haven't made any leeway into actually like hearing complaints, that we haven't had any part in trying to help with this whole police community relation, because there's no transparency. And, the citizens don't feel like, what they're being, what we hear and what their concerns aren't being taken care of or heard. And that, we are, yes, like we have the advisory word within our committee, but we don't feel like we have done much advising, or our advisement hasn't been taken under consideration.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Okay.
I'm Demario Boone. I kind of second that, and just basically the worry is the teeth of the committee. Where are we getting the power to do anything or any movement should something be presented to the committee?
Okay. Do you have the support of your police chief? And if you do, to do what?
So our chief of police, he is on the call, and he is a member of this committee, Chief Lauren Marion. You want to say hi, Chief?
Yes. How you doing, Mr. Bergeron?
Great. How are you doing?
Lauren Marion.
It's
I'm
been
good,
a
I'm
minute
good.
since, yeah.
Yeah, so I took over as the chief February of 2018, and in a couple of weeks I have 26 years on the job here with Peoria. So, yep. Thanks for being on tonight.
Okay. So if you feel as if you don't have teeth, and Chief, thank you for being on the call. I think this is great. If you're hearing the voice, it should cause some concern with respect to the commission and complaints. The question really is do you get complaints? Do you review them? Is there a 90 to 120 day window after you review complaints? Do you render a decision as to whether or not it's sustained, upheld, dismissed, those types of things? Is there any kind of recommendation that a complaint be sent to internal affairs? I know that one of the old 70s and 80s cry was, we need to have subpoena power. And of course, those things really kind of frowned upon as we moved into the 90s and 2000s, because it cost the city money to retain an attorney to look over the shoulder of the police department and internal affairs. So with that question in mind, if there is transparency on the complaint process, do you do those things?
Can I jump
Yes,
in,
sir.
Mr. Allen, Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Rita. Hi, Ken. It's
Hey,
Rita.
Rita. How are you?
So I'm doing well. Wish I could see you. I'm actually driving, leaving from another meeting, but thank you for joining us today. Much appreciated. I shared how you were the moderator between the city and the NAACP and other groups to actually get this committee started many years ago.
Yes.
So we are not, because we're not a citizen review board, we don't actually review complaints. We don't actually see the complaints themselves. The complaints are investigated within the police department. And if a individual is unsatisfied with the investigation of the police department, then they can come to our committee to voice their concerns. So you know, we're more influential than we are in terms of having any real authority. And so we don't see the complaints themselves. We find out how many are sustained and how many, you know, are not sustained. And so that's the
Okay.
kind of information that we get.
Understood. And it's good to hear you, Rita. If I can't see you, it's good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
So in terms of your mission, it is in the mandate of how you were created. So if that is the protocol, it sounds as if you are an advisory body, and if people come before you and tell you about their complaints, they then expect some kind of redress. Does that ever occur?
Not since I've been on the committee, sir, since last August, we haven't fielded any citizen complaints.
Okay. Then within the process of complaint summaries, are the complaints that you do take a look at, are at any point in time, anyone, Chief Lauren, if the advisory commission works with the department to provide an annual summary of, or a monthly summary of complaints to the public?
So the way it's set up, I go over quarterly and advise the committee on how many complaints were received and whether they were sustained or not sustained. But as far as actually seeing the complaints, they do not see the complaint. When the complainant gets the conclusion of the investigation, there is a sentence on the bottom of that form that lets them know that if they are unsatisfied with the findings of the complaint, that they may contact the advisory committee.
Okay. So is it possible to share them even if they're redacted? The names are redacted?
I would defer to legal counsel on that. We just had that conversation
Okay.
about the complaint form. If Moss, are you on?
I am on. We did have this conversation just a little bit ago, and I spoke to Corporation Counsel as well. The Peoria City Code has a section where it addresses the purpose and creation of the Peoria Police Community Relations Advisory Committee, which is this committee. It does say that a member shall not become involved in the original investigation of the complaint.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only when a citizen brings a complaint forward to the advisory committee would they come into discussing the actual complaint that was already investigated by PPD.
Okay.
So to your answer, no, at this point.
Understood. I with respect to the comments that were made earlier about, the reason I'm asking this is really trying to assess your functionality and how you work with respect to civic engagement. Is there any kind of report to the public about the advisory council, or if you are advisory to the chief in any way, you have to be able to advise on something. And the question is by what parameters are those things? Do they exist? And if there is room for discussion about it, you might want to think about what does advising mean? And I guess what I'm trying to move towards is some police advisory commissions do two things. They provide a summary of complaints that they received either on a monthly or quarterly basis or an annual basis. And on behalf of the police department, if the police department doesn't do it itself. Police advisory commissions conduct annual customer service surveys of residents. COPS does have survey templates. that you can download, and those templates can list a number of questions that you can ask residents about how they feel about policing, whether or they're satisfied, can they make recommendations to improve services, and so forth. That can be a function, an outward function of a police advisory commission. Additionally, police advisory commissions can hold quarterly or maybe 1 or 2 meetings throughout the year as listening sessions with the chief in particular wards, and they should be demographically balanced and be able to listen to the concerns of residents about policing in various communities. And that's kind of, it's not short of perhaps a, for example, in Chicago, where you have a beat and there's a cops meeting and everyone within that police district or that police district will come out and voice different concerns that they have about public safety in a month. The question is how do you do that and how do you participate in it? Moving with respect to the George Floyd and Jacob Blake protest, a number of recommendations immediately followed that. And of course, the role of police advisory commissions oftentimes is to promote civic engagement. I think that when you see one-way policing where a department does not have a police advisory commission or an advisory commission is not working to, when I say one-way policing, it is protect, we protect and serve rather than we serve and protect. It's kind of a flip, but it is really where a police department oftentimes has listens to constituents or the community on a regular basis, and you can do that through your police advisory commission. I know that recommendations that were made either through Noble, they made 4 recommendations that really kind of talked about no chokeholds and officer intervention for another officer that they thought was using excessive force to stop him. They talked about crisis intervention training and policy reforms. Black Lives Matter had 8 Can't Wait on their website that made 8 recommendations for police departments to make reforms. The role of police advisory commissions can be to assist departments with training. I know that sometimes when a department has training and citizens are present, officers are less reticent to speak up or participate because you are not one of their own. And if training is delivered by someone who is non-law enforcement, then they don't seem to take it seriously. And to some extent, with the rigors of the job and seeing death and shootings and how people treat each other, sometimes officers become hardened and to some extent cynical about behaviors of individuals. I'm not going to stereotype. Every department is different. But if you are going to play an active role on a police advisory commission, I think it's important to, one, understand the role of police officers. So I'm sure you have a requirement where if you're participating on this police advisory commission, you probably need to go to your Citizens Police Academy through that training. And I would suggest that you probably partake in some sort of training, whether it be able to review crisis intervention training or de-escalation trainings, or be able to be informed on some things or study some of the police parameters that come out of PERF or the International Association of Police Chiefs, and or send a representative to some of the annual conventions. I know they are virtual now, but if you're going to be advisory, then be informed of police practices and be able to completely educate and more make recommendations to the chief about a way forward or a way to improve. So you have to be balanced, not only just serving the community, but also serving the chief so that he is informed about the community. In moments of crisis and or community tensions, police advisory commissions can be very instrumental in calming tensions. And standing with the mayor or standing with the police chief, not necessarily offering an opinion, but if you feel as if you have a spokesman to talk about the inciting incident, and if there's a way to calm fears, to be able to participate in those forums and do those things, even if it means holding forums. Sometimes after an inciting incident that breeds tension, a police advisory commission can hold grievance hearings, public grievance hearings, to allow the public to decompress. And they can you use a two-step approach in those meetings. The two-step approach was, what do you like about the city of Peoria? What do you like about the police department? Start with that. The second piece is, tell me how you feel about the inciting incident. What went wrong? And those things are different. You need somebody who's a third-party neutral who can do that you don't have to spend money on. And then the second part of your meeting should be able to capture, can you give us recommendations on how the department can improve? I think you always have to be looking forward and asking from residents how the city of Peoria's police department can make improvements, and be open to suggestions, to be able to take the pulse of residents, which is either if you're doing it through an annual survey or you're doing it through listening sessions, you can do those things. I know that in Kenosha, where I am now, post Jacob Blake, we're holding 4 civic dialogues, allowing residents to use that same process to where the mayor and the police chief are listening, and they're going to take criticism and heat as these dialogues go forward. But residents are also going to make recommendations on how the police department can go forward. And oftentimes residents are not informed about police practices and cannot make informed decisions, but they can tell you how they feel. And then you have to determine what are the things that will make, from what you've heard, what can you do to address those things, and how can the Police Advisory Commission assist the chief in incorporating those recommendations as you go forward. So it is, if you feel as if you are not doing anything that you may not have teeth with on an internal level, I would suggest you discuss among yourselves ways to provide civic engagement. One of the problems with human rights commissions and sometimes police advisory commissions are, if you are meeting monthly and there is nothing happening, the question is, well, why are we meeting? So move the meeting to every other month, or move the meeting quarterly, and make it interesting. Task members of the Police Advisory Commission with research, and come back with a report on what you found with respect to police programs, policies, and practices. How does the city of Peoria's police department's use of force policy measure up with someone else's? Body camera issues in Kenosha were an issue. I don't think you really have that, maybe in Peoria, but I think you always have to look forward on how to improve policing. I know PERF and IACP are constantly looking forward, so is Noble in that effort. So I would monitor any recommendations that come out of those things, and there are other law enforcement quarterlies or monthlies that give you those reports. I am not going to recommend one thing over another, but I think you have to do, from what I'm hearing, some kind of internal self-assessment that makes you feel some kind of self-worth. And if you feel as if you're not moving forward or feeling valued or effective in your role, you need to start asking, you might want to start asking, not need, you might want to start asking questions about what is it that will make us feel more effective? How can we help this department and the chief provide greater services to the mayor and the city and be an effective tool? So it's good to constantly make a self-assessment and make recommendations on how to make improvements. It's like if you want a good marriage, sometimes it's better not to stay the same. You constantly have to make improvements and adjustments, as you move. So those are some of the thoughts that I can offer. I'm also open to taking any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. King. Ms. King?
She's muted. Yeah, there you go.
I think it's important for the gentleman to know that we're not a commission. We are a committee. The commissions in the city of Peoria have authority and power, but we're just a committee.
I think you said something, Ms. King. Is that an opportunity, Chief Lauren?
I would interject to say that we are set up, even though it's called an advisory committee, it still falls under the category of a city commission.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't title it that way.
But commissions can vote and make decisions that are binding.
Well, it depends. It
Like the
depends.
Liquor Commission.
Oh, well, that's different. Yeah, that the Liquor Commission is different. The Police and Fire Commission, it depends on the charge. But we could have been called an advisory commission, but it's still the same. It's still advisory in nature. It's really not the committee versus the commission. It's the advisory aspect of it.
So, Chief Lauren, having heard all of this, what are your thoughts?
So, and I know over the years that I've been attending the meetings that one of the frustrations from the members is that they don't get to give recommendations to myself.
You're kind of breaking up.
For how they think that the complaint is it. Let me try moving to a different location here. Is that any better?
Yep, we
Yeah.
can hear you now, Chief.
Okay. So one of the frustrations I think from the committee that I've heard over the years is that, and kind of like Chief Boone said, is that there's no teeth per se, meaning that they do not review the complaints and review the body footage, the dash cam footage, reports, and provide recommendations to me on that investigation. I think with the laws and the policies here in Illinois, with the Freedom of Information Act, we do have a collective bargaining agreement with the officers. With those hurdles, it's not as easy to pass that information along to the committee and then read information from them to be able to let them make the decisions and recommendations. I guess anybody can make a recommendation, but to have the input, I think, and if anybody feels different, but I think that's the biggest complaint or concern is the committee wants to be able to have that say in it.
Mm-hmm. What about civic engagement? What about would this body does your committee hold public hearings, or can
So
they?
last year, yes, sir. Last year we ended up holding, I believe there were 4 different public hearings in different zip code areas. And a couple of the areas had good turnouts, and they engaged the community. I thought this year with COVID has thrown a wrench, I'm sure, into everything going on. So,
Have
Chief Marion, you're having some technical difficulties again, Chief.
Yeah. So let me ask this question. With that said, after post George Floyd, have you made any program or policy or reforms since then?
Mr. Bergeron, I moved again, so hopefully you can hear me a little bit better.
Yes, we can hear you better.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons I don't do video, because of the bandwidth and being able to feed into it.
Yep.
But yes, we have made policy decisions. One of the things immediately that we did, the state of Illinois had already banned chokeholds, but we allowed carotid restraints. We removed carotid restraints from use of force. We added a duty to intervene into the use of force. So we have made steps into reforming our use of force policy.
Okay, that's great. Was that publicized?
It was brought up at a city council meeting, but we didn't do like a press release or anything like that.
Yeah. So I think I would encourage your committee to get with you and find a way to let residents know what changes that you've made, because those things are substantial now, and we're all cloistered and frustrated, and no one's working, or some are, and some are in school and some aren't. But all you need is one more shooting and people will be on the street again. So any kind of reforms or recommendations that you can make that gives the committee, gives residents in Peoria some reassurance that the department is progressive is always a positive step. And you can engage your committee, your advisory committee to serve or assist in that role. I'm going to have to jump off, Andre, in a few minutes. But what I would also want to tell you is in Minneapolis, where I am also working with Chief Arredondo, we are one of the recommendations that he's seriously looking at or consider. He made several changes himself, Chief Lauren, already, but we're getting ready to do mediation there. One of the considerations is using alternate social service networks. So when you talk about defunding the police department, it is really not the word defunding or taking money away from the police department. It is to some extent adjusting or making a change or a reorganization of how the department does its crisis intervention. And that usually is the focus of the defund argument. So in Eugene, Oregon, which is the most popular model, the CAHOOTS model out of Eugene is where the White Eagle Clinic is contracted with the city of Eugene, Oregon, to provide social service intervention for drug users or people acting out with drugs or alcohol, or in some cases, psychological or schizophrenia, or those types of things, and maybe some social service issues or housing issues, where a police officer might be called into a very touchy situation, like in Rochester, New York, and officers show up to an individual high on PCP, and something like that occurs. What CAHOOTS does, the White Eagle Clinic, sends its social workers out to do an intervention. If they cannot control the situation in hand or need assistance, they will then call for backup, or they might go out with an officer to adjust. The program saved the city of Eugene, Oregon, some $6.5 million, because it freed the police department up to fight crime rather than do social service calls of that nature. And oftentimes those types of calls where high-risk crisis intervention is needed, it puts officers at risk, and sometimes it can lead to missteps where civil liability is then impacted on the budget for a city, and lawsuits occur and so forth. So that is something to take a look at. I can send you some of the links to the reforms and recommendations from Noble. Eight Can't Wait out of Black Lives Matter, and the Eugene, Oregon model for your review. So I would encourage you all to if you serve on this type of body, you should look at the mobile training units in the Peoria area, see if you can participate on those trainings, become more informed about what policing is, try to take a crisis intervention course, a de-escalation training course, be informed to really make sound recommendations for what's happening in the country so that the Peoria Police Department stays cutting edge. So I'm gonna have to jump off, Andre, and thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night.
Thank you, Rita. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you
Chief.
so much, sir. Appreciate it. And I'll be looking out for those links if you want to send those to me, sir, and I'll forward them to the committee.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Great.
Andre-
Andre, I have to jump off too, but
Okay.
okay, talk later. Bye-bye.
Yep. Take care.
Andre, can I speak up?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Chief.
So what he was talking about in the reform for crisis response, we're blessed in Peoria to be able to work with ERS, Emergency Response Services. They are an affiliate of Unity Point Methodist, and we do call them for crisis situations. So anywhere from a potential suicide risk to a health crisis to an alcohol, not overdose, but alcohol situation. So we do have a crisis team in place that we contract with.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief, for that context. It's good to know those things because, again, those are things that as a committee we can promote. And same thing when you mentioned, not using I'm sorry, I might be using the wrong terminology, but essentially not using chokeholds anymore as part of excessive force. I think those are things that we definitely want to promote to demonstrate that what our police department is doing. So thank you for that context. I took some notes. You guys might have heard me type in when I accidentally had my iPad unmuted, but I took some notes of kind of what he was talking about. And I definitely want to, send out a synopsis, if you will, especially for those who weren't able to participate. But I think the biggest thing that I take from Mr. Bergeron's conversation is I think each and every one of us needs to look ourselves in the mirror and say, and answer a few different questions. One, why did we join this committee? Two, what do we want to contribute to this committee? And then three, how can we make it better? And so I think that is something, that we all need to be looking and doing, as we continue to have these meetings and getting more engaged. I love the idea of us participating in some trainings. I know right now with COVID, it's weird, but I definitely would love to do a ride along, things of that nature, because I think in order for us to want to improve, police and community relations, and for us to want to make recommendations, we've got to be knowledgeable. I think that's very important. We've got to be very knowledgeable. So I appreciate Mr. Bergeron coming on. And like I said, I'll type up a synopsis probably tomorrow and get that to the committee. Let's go ahead and
Can I ask Chief one question, Andre?
Yeah, sure.
I'm impressed by this policy that you added on the duty to intervene, which seems to be a real important policy. Can you just, I think Andre wants to move on here, but can you talk just a tiny bit about that? And I think, as Andre said, I think it'd be really good to publicize these reforms or however you call them, but.
Andre, I was just.
Sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chief. No, you're good.
Hi, Allison. If you want to say something while I pull this up, go ahead.
Okay, so when he was talking about the police academy thing, like the citizens one, so I was a police explorer for 5 years. In those 5 years, I actually taught the police academy that I was exploring with the Elmhurst Police Department, because at a point I decided I had thought I wanted to be a police officer, some type of law enforcement law. And in the citizens police academy, it's a great thing, especially because, we got the citizens, especially ones who wanted to see police reform in it. where, you know, we got to do ride-alongs. We were actually like trained to do we had a lot of certificates. Like I had this first aid, I had emergency response. And that's something that I would be happy to teach everyone alongside a police officer, if you feel more comfortable with that. And then I agree with Janice that, you know, those things should have been not advertised, but publicized. Because I mean, those are something that, like, you know, the citizens want to hear, because right now their impression is nothing is being done, but we want to show them that, you know, that the police are doing something to change it. We don't want to keeping this negative connotation of, you know, the not doing anything, how many more have to go. So I think it's important that we do publicize that.
Yep, I agree. Chief, did you find what you were looking for, sir?
I did come here this conference for. Can you hear me, Andre?
Yep, we can hear you now, Chief.
Okay, I apologize for this terrible reception. So two things. One, with the Citizens Police Academy, usually we run that at least once a year, and I know Janice has been through a couple of them. But one of the things that I would like to see, and this is just my recommendation, but I would like to see it as a requirement for committee members to have to go through the Citizens Police Academy. I think it's eye-opening and it is good experience. And like Allison had mentioned, part of that process is conducting a ride-along. So COVID has really messed things up. I can look at seeing if we could do a smaller version, like with just the committee. And I think by trying to put that on either end of October, November, something like that, because it is kind of a smaller group that we can do social distancing, wear face coverings, and be protected on it. But I think it would be very educational. So that's something I'll follow up on. We have not planned on doing a Citizens Police Academy for this year, only because of COVID. Usually we do it around September, October. But because of COVID, we haven't done it. But that's something I can look into.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great, Chief. And you know what we can do is, if you think you might have a follow up about that for our next meeting, we could put that under new business, because I know me personally, I would like to participate, again, just to be better informed and better engaged.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, absolutely. And there's a lot of new members, so I think it would be educational.
I agree. Ms. King, were you going to say something, ma'am?
Oh, I was going to say, when I first got appointed to the committee, I did go to the academy, but I think it would be beneficial for me to repeat. And I encourage people. A lot of people have gone, though. I did encourage everybody who came in the committee that it was a good thing before COVID.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. I think that now we've got a lot of new blood on the committee, a lot of new energy, and I think that that would be a good. So, you know, obviously, making it mandatory sounds a little severe, but I would hope that, based off availability, people will want to participate. Before we move on, does anybody else, and forgive me I wasn't trying to move on fast, so I do apologize about that. If it came off that way. But did anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns based off of Mr. Bergeron's conversation with us today?
Chief, do you want to, is it inappropriate to update us on those policies now? Do you want to do it another time or through email or?
No, I'm good to do it now. I was just waiting until everyone answered Andre's question, and then I'll cover it.
Okay.
Well, if we're addressing Mr. Bergeron's comments, I'm intrigued by his recommendation to have more civic engagement, and I continue to think that we have a very unique opportunity to include everyone who just can't get out to City Hall or to a zip code meeting. I really think that we should talk about how to engage as many people as we can on Zoom. I've been on more Zoom committee meetings now, and it's not particularly fun, but if people have an issue, I think they'll come, and I think we should try to hear from as many people as we can. So I think that I like his terms of civic engagement. And anyway, you guys know how I feel about it. I say it every single time we meet. So I'd love to see some way to get more citizen, just to let people talk. I mean, I think we shouldn't be scared to hear what people have to say and let them get it off their chest, and then maybe they'll be happier. I don't know. We need to know what people are thinking.
Yep. No, I agree. And we have that under our new business today to discuss potential virtual zip code meetings. So I think that that was a common thing I take from Mr. Bergeron as well, too, is us figuring out how to be more engaged with our community. And so I'm right with you, Janice. If anybody else didn't have anything, Chief, you can go ahead and proceed, sir.
All righty. So in our use of force general order, it was within a couple of days after Mr. Floyd's incident that we started discussing as a command staff the duty to intervene, because we all saw the videos and were appalled by the officers just standing there, not getting involved, not doing anything, while the officer was using the restraint that he did. And so one of the things that we came out with, this is dated for change on July 9th, to give you an idea of how far ahead of it we were, or just a lot of places are still going through the process of reforming, but we made our change on July 9th. So the duty to intervene paragraph is section 7, states duty to intervene. Officers of the Peoria Police Department have an obligation to protect the public and other employees. It shall be the duty of every police officer present at any scene where physical force is being applied to either stop or attempt to stop another employee, where the observations lead them to believe that the use of force being applied is inconsistent with this general order. We did, within the last 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, receive additional updates from CLIA. If everyone remembers, we are CLIA accredited, and CLIA came out with a few more recommendations in order to meet their standard. So actually today we just went through the order again. So the language is going to get changed a little bit, but for the most part, the context of the duty to intervene will not change. It'll still have that context there, but the wording will be a little bit different. If you remember the last meeting, I said that we finally got all of our orders online. So once that gets updated, we'll update the general orders online. We also have in there prohibited use of force, and we quoted the section in the Illinois statute for prohibited use of force by a peace officer. And in that section, subsection C, it states that the chokeholds, and then it goes into the definition of it, basically saying that the chokeholds are prohibited for use by police. And as I mentioned, in our previous general order, officers were allowed to do a carotid restraint, which was different than a chokehold. But we removed that. So now officers can no longer do carotid restraints because just by looking at it, it looks very similar to a chokehold, but it's different. The technique is different, but we did away with that. So we removed that from our order as well.
Thank you. Appreciate you providing that, and and those updates. I think those is good for us to continue to be engaged. And if you, especially for those who potentially might not be on the call today, but if there's a synopsis maybe of that you could share with the committee, Chief, that'd be great. Just so that way we're just better in the known and better educated.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chief. I think those are things that concern everyone. Those that you just hit the hot button issues, and I think it would comfort our community to know that those are policies that you uphold. I think it would go a long way to calming people down they knew those were policies. But so thank you.
Yeah, and I really liked Mr. Bergeron's recommendation that it come from the committee and get out there, because it gives the committee exposure to the public. And so in between the time between now and our next meeting, if Andre and I could work together and maybe do some type of press release and we could send it out. I don't want it to come from the police department, because I don't want to make it seem like the police department's controlling the committee. But by all means, we can get together with the PIO and work on some wording and get that put out. You know, at the time when we did change that, and like I said, the change occurred effective on the general order July 9th, but the process started even before that, because the process takes a few weeks to go through. I won't bore you with the details of why it takes a couple weeks, but I say that to point out that we were ahead of the curve on this. And then we will have a few other changes when with the CLIA changes. So I think after the CLIA changes get finalized, that would be a good opportunity for the police department and the committee to put something out on it, if everyone's in agreement on that.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds great, Chief. And I definitely would love to connect with you on that. We can come up with a draft, work with communications from the city of Peoria, and then share that draft with the committee, see if anyone on the committee has any questions, comments, concerns regarding that. And then we can look to put that out between our next meeting. I think that's a good small win for us.
So Chief, in your memory, is it fair to ask you, has this ever been an issue in Peoria? Especially the one with the, I guess either one of them, the chokehold issue or the carotid restraint or the duty to intervene. Has that ever been an issue that you can remember?
No, in fact, I would say contrary, because it was probably late 90s that we had an officer that observed action from another officer that they felt was inappropriate and excessive use of force. And that officer came forward and reported it to the supervisor. And, you know, that started the chain reaction of an internal investigation and an investigation into the matter. In my 26 years, I cannot think of, and I'm not saying that it's never happened, but I can't think of any situation where there was a failure on the duty to intervene or that a chokehold injured somebody. You know, so prior to the chokehold being prohibited, obviously at that time it was able to be used. Like if an officer's fighting with somebody or something, they would be able to put someone in a chokehold. That was up until the Illinois statute made it illegal to do so, unless obviously it was a deadly force situation. So, but to answer your question, I cannot personally think of any problems with those.
Okay.
Which is not a bad problem to have. So, thank you for that, Chief. Outside of that, let's go ahead and move on now to our next point of unfinished business, and that's the subcommittee complaint policy draft that we went over last meeting. Christina, I had just I forwarded you the draft again. Would you mind sharing it just so that way the committee can look at it as we're going through that again?
Yes, let me go. I'll try to pull it up.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate that. And while she's doing that, to provide context for those who potentially weren't on the last call, a subcommittee convened of myself, Ms. King, Nina, Janice, and Karen, and we got together to discuss, what is our, procedure will look like, if we receive a grievance from a citizen, just to make sure that, we have a formal process. I think it's very important to make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. And so this is the draft that was presented at our last meeting. to the committee to review. But then also there were some things that were presented that I know that that our legal counsel, Ms. Patel, was going to look into. So specifically, it was in reference of the documentation that we asked. I know that we had some questions around the FOIA process and seeing if there was a way that the committee would not have to necessarily go through that. I think Dr. Ali mentioned that the media doesn't go through it or however, so we wanted to look into that. And I know that also officer conduct history was something that was mentioned last week that we will look into. So if it's okay, I would like to yield to you, Ms. Patel, if you could provide any context that that you maybe received since our last meeting.
Sure. So regarding the FOIAs, I did look into it in detail, and I also contacted people in Chief's line of control to try to get more information that I probably would not have myself. So the statute itself, the FOIA statute, does have lots of subsections regarding news media. One of them being voluminous requests, that they're not considered repeat requesters because they do require that information. What I was able to find about the information that they're able to get is that the process was created decades ago, and it was refined to what it is today. So decades ago, people from the media would come to the police station requesting information every single day. And so that's why at the time they deemed it necessary to give them certain information, just to make, I guess, everyone's life easier, because they needed, the juicy gossip, and the police department wanted to provide them with something, and also have some transparency there. What the process is today is that a week's worth of police reports, absent some that are not allowed, like juvenile related, or I think there was one more that Lieutenant Wetzel mentioned that I have to look at my notes to determine what it exactly was. But they print out a week of reports, redact the information since they are ongoing. So that would include, names, that would include, certain information that can't be given to the media at the time. And with that, the media can come into the police department and bring a piece of paper and a pen and take notes. They're not allowed to take that information with them outside of the building. They could only take what they wrote down. This is something that I spoke to with the chief and as well as corporation counsel. If you're looking for that information, we can make that available to you just like the media has. So if you want to know anything, you can go into the police department and you can look at all the police reports that are available to the media, and you can get access to that information. If you're needing something more than that, that's something that's going to be situation specific, and we have to look into what you're requesting specifically and if we can provide it according to the law or according to union positions, etc. Any questions?
So just for clarification purposes, so it sounds like, and just running through a hypothetical, if we have a citizen that comes to us after they've gone through the formal process, they're not okay with the decision, and so they now want to essentially appeal to our advisory committee. Our subcommittee would reach out, would go down to the Peoria Police Department and ask for, the police report, the body cam footage, whatever. And then essentially based off of that unique circumstance would determine if we're able to get it or not? No.
So my understanding was the question that was asked prior to was not specifically tailored last week or last month to the situation where the board is reviewing a specific complaint. So this is a situation, this is every other situation. So if you're just looking for information that the media gets police reports that are redacted. They don't get information that is related to a specific complaint. And Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we discussed as far as what we discussed, there hasn't been any FOIA specifically related to any officer complaints and the file reviewing or the file review for that. Is that my understanding of what we discussed?
Correct. To my knowledge, I don't know that we've ever received a FOIA request wanting to see the complaint and then the officer's file that was involved in the complaint. That, to my knowledge anyway.
So in the situation where we do get a complaint, there is a decision made by the police department and the citizen decides that they want to go to the advisory committee to follow up. In that situation, we can provide you with information that you need in order to advise the police chief on your findings. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can I ask
So
one
now,
question?
okay, go ahead, Chief.
No, go ahead, Andre. Sorry to interrupt.
So with the information that we would request, would that be redacted information, or would we get the full pie?
It depends on what you're requesting specifically, right? If you're requesting medical records, we can't give that to you. HIPAA prohibits it. If
Right.
you're requesting, I don't know, say his conduct, his prior conduct, that is something that the board can potentially review and we can make that available to you. Obviously not for release to the public, but we can make it available to you in a certain capacity. Now, if it's, there is a statutory law regarding personnel records, and that's Illinois Personal Records Act. So it depends on what you're requesting too. So I would have to review, statutory statutes out there, and as well as making sure that there's nothing in the union contract to make sure I can give it to you. But it is very specific. So it's going to depend on the situation.
Okay. Chief Marion?
Yes, thanks. Now, as far as the one concern I have is the body cam footage and dash cam footage, because there have to be certain guidelines followed, like the people in the that are captured on body camera. If they're not arrested, they have to sign off for permission for that release. So, Mas, are you saying that video would be released or would not be released without going through the FOIA process?
So it is very situational, and I'm sorry that I keep saying this, but if you are requesting the body cam footage, we would have to look into if it is allowed or not. Again, it would depend on the situation, Chief Marion. So if you told me that the person released the information and we're allowed to give it, then we can. If I believe that members of the committee can come to the police department and view the video footage for their purpose of reviewing a complaint. But absent that, we can't take it outside unless there is release from the person that is on the footage itself, or the investigation is completely closed.
Can you?
Oh, go ahead.
Can you just double check and verify that for me about someone non-police reviewing the footage? Because I don't think that that's right. I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I'm right on it.
So at what point though? So is this a point that investigation has concluded, or when?
So for example, if a complaint comes in, and we can use two different scenarios. One, the person gets arrested, files a complaint about the arrest. Mm-hmm. If the judicial process is not complete, I would argue that that could not be released because of the judicial process. Mm-hmm. Or two,
I agree with you.
Or two, even if charges weren't filed, we would still have to have a release from that person in order to have anybody to come in and review that footage, is my understanding of it.
Okay, so we did discuss this prior to the meeting, and I agreed with you that if there is an ongoing investigation or if there's an internal complaint and it's not closed, then we can't release that body cam footage. If the person on the body cam footage did not release it, that is where I'm unsure, but I will look into if we can give the board accessibility to view that footage in a certain capacity, just for their purpose of reviewing a complaint.
So thank you for specifying all that for us, but can I back up like a bunch of steps in the whole process to just the submission of the complaint? Is there anything that prohibits our committee, if the complainant agrees, just from seeing the raw data, the raw complaint, is there any reason the complaints are being held from us? Not the data on the officer, not the body cam footage, just the complaint, the raw complaint. Is there any legal reason why we can't just see that if the person submitting the complaint agrees to let us just see it, the whole thing unredacted?
So are you talking about post investigation or?
No, I'm talking about the day they submit it. Is there any reason legally why we can't see it if they agree to let us see it? I thought that's kind of what our entire commission was intended to do, and somehow we've never seen a complaint. And I don't see any reason why. I'm not asking for body cam footage. I'm not asking for police reports. I'm not asking for conduct history, just the report that the individual files.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason? Why are we not seeing those? I'd like you to explain that to us.
Yeah,
please.
sure. I can't explain you why you're not receiving complaints. I think that's, a number of factors. It is on the actual report, like Chief Marion mentioned, that on the report or the decision that's given to the complainant, it's on there that they can contact you if they're not satisfied with the decision that was made internally.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about way back a year earlier when they submit the complaint. I mean, the way I read our statute is that we were designed and originated simply to take complaints, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. That's what the statute says, and we don't see them. So I'm just curious, is there a legal reason to prevent us from just getting the raw data as soon as it's submitted? Before the investigation happens, mm-hmm. Just get a copy of the complaints. Is there a legal?
Yep. So I would disagree with you because the city code does specifically say that the board or a member won't be involved in the original investigation of the complaint until after it's completed.
So could you share that with us? Because
sure.
Could you? Is that in the literature that was sent out to us?
If you go to the Peoria City Code, it's Chapter 24, Article 3. Section 24-61.
Could you say that again slower, please? I'm sorry, I can't write that fast.
Chapter 24, labeled Police. Article 3, Police Community Relations Advisory Committee. And then Section 24-61. It's labeled Created Purpose.
So it says specifically that we're not allowed to see it, or that we're just not allowed to help determine it?
No, it says it shall not be, I'm just reading it to you. Okay. It says the member shall not become involved in the original investigation of the complaint.
So what does that, so I guess there's some interpretation to involved. Is there a reason we can't see it? I mean, what does it mean to be involved? Just to even read it?
Right, so when I read the whole section, my understanding of what this committee's purpose is, and obviously it's more than that, there's community outreach, there's other factors that you as a board or a committee can do to help bridge the gap. But for the purposes of complaints, it seems pretty clear to me as it reads right now that the police will go through their internal process, sustain or not sustain the complaint that was made by a citizen. And if the citizen chooses, they can bring it to this advisory committee to be reviewed. afterwards.
And all that is in this chapter 24-61, all that stuff you just said, that process
That process is right there, paragraph 2.
that says, that lists those steps?
It's not a step, it's a paragraph.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to see that. Thank you very much.
Yep, not a problem. And if there's something you want to, change about this process or whatever, or your capacity to, expand on your capacity, that's something we can work with too. It obviously have to go through council. I'd have to talk to chief corporation counsel, but, it's possible. It's not impossible.
Thank you so much, Ms. Patel. This is great, healthy context. After hearing all of this, I think that there are some nuances that, if you're willing to, I would love for our subcommittee that drafted this and you, Ms. Patel, to connect offline and work on incorporating some of the verbiage and some of the technicalities that you talked about as well too. So I think that needs to be incorporated in our procedure, whether that's, an italicized print or something along those lines, because I think there's just some nuances that we need to ensure that are mentioned. And then that way, when we come back to the committee itself, we can vote on that and feel confident that this document, and documents are always up for change, but this document, for the most part, covers the wide web of scenarios for the most part. And so would that be something that you would be comfortable with? And is that something that the subcommittee members who were on that, Ms. King, Nina, and Karen and Janice, would you guys be okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that would
Sure.
be great if you're willing.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'd be more than willing to help. I'm here on behalf of the city, but also the chief. There's certain things I can't do because I am a city attorney, but I'm here to help you too. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. And we don't want to put you in any weird predicaments, but I think even just, and again, it's just like, I was trying to type some of the things you were saying, but it was, and I want to make sure we get this right. I think that's very important. And so what I'll do is I'll create a email thread between us all, and we'll get a Zoom link out there, and we can maybe connect in the next week or so and just start working on this. And then at our October meeting, I feel confident that we'll be able to present a document that'll be ready to be voted on.
Great. I'm actually glad this is happening because it was one of my points that I wanted to bring up because I didn't see any kind of policy. I didn't have, if I didn't have it, or I'm not sure, but I'm glad that this was already thought through. So I'd be happy to look at it.
Yeah. The higher ed in me was like, we don't have a policy. What's going on? So I'm glad we're working on it. I think we're making some good momentum. So I'm gonna, can I seek a motion to defer this conversation into our next meeting in October, please?
So move.
Second.
All right. Christina, you want to conduct our roll call, please?
Yes, Andre Allen,
Yay.
Chief Boone,
Okay.
Shalandra Birch, Allison Galvin,
Here.
Nina Gudis,
Sorry. Yay.
Chief Marion,
Yes.
Megan Wynn,
Aye.
Karen Wilson,
Yes.
Janice Zagardo.
Yes, thank you.
I know you left me out because I joined the meeting 4 minutes late and then I got kicked off.
No. Okay, Lorraine King.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I know we're a little over, and I know definitely, like I said, I loved us to have a hard stop at the latest will be 7, but if we can move on to our new business now, Christine, if you could pull the agenda back up. And so, with new business, it kind of it touches on what Mr. Bergeron was talking about. Us, I know we wanted to do zip code meetings last year. We were looking at some potential sites and got kind of hung up with COVID. And now, we're in this virtual space. And so what I wanted to talk to the committee about was us to revisit that and conduct those via Zoom, but, potentially use a personal account, whether we use the free subscription to Zoom, I know there's Google Hangouts that we can use as well too, just to provide some opportunities to engage with citizens, and then we can bring back some of that conversation back to our committee as a whole. So I'll open up the floor for discussion, but that's kind of where, speaking to Janice and others, I feel like, this would be a good step in the right direction. We'll have to discuss, when do we want to do these? What would be the best timing, and so forth. But I at least wanted to open the floor for discussion and see how the committee felt about this.
I think it's a good idea. We have to engage in some way, and not being able to go to the people, then we have to, do it in cyberspace. So however we can facilitate doing the virtual town halls, I'm all behind it.
Thank you.
Shalandra, I think it's a good idea also. I have a question about how will we make sure they know that we're having the zip code meeting?
That's a great question. And so maybe we can, work with, Stacey Peterson of the city of Peoria. Maybe we can get the link on our, the timing of it on the city of Peoria website. I think those are some conversations that we can have. But that's a good point, though. We got to definitely advertise it. And then also we all have our own personal social media pages and things of that nature that we can utilize to say that we're conducting these.
This is Lorraine, and I'm in agreement, but I do have one concern that there were people who might be left out, because we have a member of this committee who doesn't participate because she said that she's not able to use Zoom. So I was just wondering if there was some way to accommodate people who might want to be included but aren't because they don't have the capability.
I think that's a good point. And now the thing is with a lot of these meetings, whether that's Zoom and the Google Play or the Google Hangout, you can call in using your cell phone. And so it's just like a conference call. I think the notion that people assume that you have to use the video capability, and I understand that. And I've tried to work with that person that you're referring to, because I definitely value her contributions to the committee. But I think that that's just something that we just need to articulate as we put that out there, that, you don't have to have the $1,000 iPhone to hop on a Zoom call. You could call in, with a basic cell phone, and we might not see your screen, but, we can hear your voice. You can listen in, you can be engaged.
Yes, I think we need to publicize that.
Yeah, I agree. From Chief Marion or from Ms. Patel, are there any concerns with us doing this? Is there any legalities that we need to be thinking about going into this online platform? I know we've done them in the past physically, but is there anything from an online platform that we should be considering about?
I would talk with Paul Peterson, our IS guy. He's the one that's the expert in that area. And I know that's one of the reasons that they don't open this meeting up to the public, but you're talking about using a personal account. So really the only thing I would see is you may get people from other zip codes when you're trying to host it in one zip code. But I'll be honest, I have no problem of opening that up and having the community forums. The only thing that's kind of would be hard to control is if somebody kind of goes off text, or what I mean, kind of goes out there a little bit. You're kind of stuck with that. But as long as it's a personal account, I can't think of anything.
Oh, I think Paul is probably the best person to set up. He would know the specifics, but I'm aware that Zoom, if you have a personal account, it limits the amount of people that can join. And you have to pay for a premium, I believe, in order to get over a certain number. And I'm not a tech person, so Paul would know the specifics on that. Chief is correct that there have been many stories, as this committee is aware, that people jump onto these and just continue to say blasphemy. So it would be hard to control who is speaking and who is not.
So my experience with Zoom is that the host has a lot of control over who gets to talk. And I think as far as the number of people, we could just say the first X number of people that show up are the ones that show up, and you can come next week.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen some really impressive control of speech in some events I've attended. I have no idea how to do it, but I think we could learn. I think those are good points that we definitely want to control who's speaking and tell them, you know, you need to behave yourself.
Right. So
Shut off the microphone.
Paul would probably know the specifics on how to do that. Like I said, not a tech person, so I couldn't tell you. But if you're moving to an online forum, limiting the amount of people that can attend is probably will not comply with the Open Meetings Act. If you're doing it in person and you're limiting people in a room because of capacity issues and having a live stream available, then that's something that would accommodate the Open Meetings Act. But that's something we could talk about.
Would we be having to comply with the Open Meetings Act, essentially, since this is not our formal meeting? These would be essentially meetings offline. Would we still be under that jurisdiction? No, I'm saying like if we hosted a virtual zip code meeting next Tuesday, since that's not within the purview of our standing meeting that we do on the second Thursday of each month, would we be conformed to the Open Meetings Act?
I would have to look into it. I can't tell you off the top of my head because Governor Pritzker has made amendments to the Open Meetings Act, but I have to look into this specific scenario and if it's acceptable.
This is me. I think, and you know, I haven't looked at the Open Meetings Act for time, but I think one of the determining factors is if there's a majority of a quorum of the committee present. So if you look at the number of members who are present, the committee members, I think we may be okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Nina. If we end up having a quorum, then since this is a set up committee, that you'd be required to follow the Open Meetings Act.
So
y'all sorry, go ahead, Mr. Patel.
No, go ahead. I don't want to go ahead.
Nope. I'm yielding. Go ahead.
Like I said, I have to look at Governor Pritzker's rules. He did make amendments to the Open Meetings Act to accommodate COVID going on right now, and they're going to change on the 14th. So if you give me a couple of days, I can get the most updated information.
No, that sounds great. What I was going to suggest is what we'll do, and I will, again, I want all our committee to participate. And so when we do this meeting, when we talk about the complaint policy procedure with Ms. Patel, let's do a 2-for-1, and let's go ahead and discuss how we want to do these zip code meetings. At that time, maybe Ms. Patel will have the information that she's looking for, and essentially we could, by our next meeting, we could have a formalized complaint process, and we could have a formalized city or virtual zip code, however we want to phrase it, process as well too. And I think that is 2 great wins for this committee. How does that sound?
That sounds good to me.
Like a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
I agree.
Awesome. Oh, great. Sounds good. Sounds good. So I will send out an email and look at some dates, and then we'll get that on the calendar, and then we'll knock that out in that planning committee. I think that'd be good for us. So let's go ahead and move on. I know, and I don't believe Mr. Burnside is on the meeting today. Mr. Burnside, are you on here? I don't see that he is. I know that he brought forth a community concern at our last, not at our last meeting, but via email. Me and him had talked offline about it, and he was going to bring some context forward to see how we could potentially use this as an opportunity to do community policing. Figure out a way for us to talk to those involved and try to rectify the situation. But he's not on the call, so I'm gonna we could just defer that to our next meeting, and then if he has any context at that time, great. or if he provides an update between now and our next meeting, we can share that via email. Now I know we only have about 3 minutes left, and I'm trying to stay hard on my 7 o'clock stop. So Chief Marion, do you have any general police updates that you want to share with us, sir?
The only thing we had, I don't know if everybody saw in the news last night, at the Resource Center up on Wisconsin, we held through Chris Johnson, our Focused Deterrence Project Manager, held a mobile food pantry up at the Resource Center. And one of the things I did ask Chris for the events that he is having up there and to send me the dates. I do apologize that I did not have the date and I didn't realize that they were holding it yesterday. I knew that they were going to hold one, and it's probably my fault. So one of the things, and I know I sent you an email on it, I requested that Chris send me the email on when some of the other events are with the actual hard date of it. I know some of the things that are coming up, but I don't have the hard dates. When I do, I'll send it out to you, Andre, and then you can send it out to the group.
Awesome. Now that sounds good. And some of the events that were mentioned on the horizon sound great. So definitely once we get those dates, we can send those out to the committee. And if we're able to participate, that'd be good. Anything else, sir?
Nope.
Thank you, sir.
That's it.
All right. Citizens, opportunity to address the committee.
Andre, I received 2.
Okay.
The first is from Shama St. Louis, and this is what she wrote. She wrote, I am writing you today to express my disappointment in the most recent behavior of our Peoria Police Department. I have gotten multiple complaints from residents regarding our PPD harassing residents by searching their cars while they are inside of Black entertainment establishments or in their homes in low-income areas like the Harrison or Taft homes. Not only are they searching cars looking for reasons to harass residents, they are legally confiscating cell phones for investigation and refusing to give them back for weeks at a time. They are pinning charges that are unwarranted and impounding people's cars. They are also threatening them with jail time or charges if they are not in cooperation with their rights being violated. I am being told it is a group of about 7 officers who work the same shift that have been abusing their power and traumatizing Black men in the community. These men are also afraid to make formal reports for fear of more retaliation. It costs somewhere of around $700 to retrieve a car after being impounded. We know this further perpetrates people into poverty. We know this prevents people from getting to work, paying a bill, or taking care of their families adequately. Yet members of our low-income communities are experiencing a record number of impounds and harassment. Why is this being allowed? There are 35 plus unsolved murders here in our cities. Why do our officers have time to seek out ways to create trouble? As a reminder, the role of the PPD is supposed to be to protect and serve every resident in every area of our city. This behavior makes our residents feel unsafe and further perpetrates distrust between the community and the police in our community. Corruption starts at the head. In order for officers to operate with integrity, the head must lead with integrity. I would like to know how this issue plans to be addressed. The second is from Joyce Harant, and she is writing on behalf of the Racial Justice Project of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria. We are interested in learning the role and accomplishment of the advisory committee and the full process by which a citizen may file a complaint against a police officer and how said complaint is processed and handled by the police department. We want to be an ally in the fight against systemic racism in our community. And those are the 2 that I received.
Thank you, Christina. On the latter one for Ms. Joyce, she did reach out to me, and I have a meeting with her group via Zoom next Wednesday. And I was planning on sharing that complaint overview chart that you sent to us last week as well too, and then just talk about the committee in general. So I definitely plan on connecting with them. And then if anything comes from that meeting, I'll bring that back to the committee.
Thank you. Are you allowed to share those complaints with the committee? Can you send those on the email link to all of us, please?
Okay.
The citizens address?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be good. And then as far as the initial one that was read, Chief Marion, is that something that you can look into, sir, and kind of see the potential validity of those allegations and provide some feedback to us at our next meeting?
I can give you a brief on it now if you would like.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so one of the things that we had going on is the large roving street parties that was going on, and then we ended up having a shooting where 13 people were shot. So we had to respond to that, and one of the things we did is create a group of officers that actively addressed these large groups. So whenever they would stop at the locations, such as MacArthur, Shell, Water Street, Cooper's on Sheridan, Dream, Status, officers would conduct a walkthrough of the lot. And if we observed a handgun in plain view in the vehicle or open alcohol in the vehicle, officers would take the appropriate action and address the issue. This is all in response to the 13 people that were shot. So again, going back to, we had to have a response to this, and that's the way we addressed it, and that's the way we'll continue to address it.
Now, thank you for that context. And so, so essentially, that in that response, just for clarity for our committee, that response is within the legalities of the police department and legal rights, essentially.
Yes. When the officers observed a handgun inside of a vehicle, you know, each situation's different. So, for example, if they see a gun inside of a vehicle, they may wait until that person leaves, commits a traffic violation, pull them over, or if they see him come to the car, they'll make contact with them and engage in conversation and follow up that way. Same thing with open alcohol. Open alcohol is illegal. So in my opinion, to do that, the officers are doing a good job of proactive police work and preventing possible bad situations to happen. And believe me, I get what Sean is saying, that how she feels or other individuals feel, but again, we have to do something. And I know in the parking lots of Dream and Status, officers have been doing those areas for much longer. It dates back to like even last year that they were conducting walkthroughs of the lots and looking in the vehicles, and the vehicles there on public or in those parking lots. And if they see the handguns, then they'll take the appropriate action. We're not going to ignore seeing a handgun inside of a vehicle. So in reference to the cell phones, one of the things, we have to have probable cause in order to seize the cell phone. So it may take a couple days to download it or to get the search warrant or whatever, but that's the only thing I could think of why it would take a few days or whatever. It would be the court process.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate it. Does somebody else have something?
Yeah, I just have a question to put it all in context to find out the scale of this. Roughly how many cars do you think were impounded in this particular incident? And since you mentioned guns, I might as well ask, how many illegal guns did you find? Or I don't even know. I don't know what makes a gun legal or illegal, but so about how, so she's talking about cars and employment and $700 to get a car out of impoundment. What's the scale of the issue?
If you give me a second, I can pull up the email of during the detail period, but this happens on probably a weekly basis, on a weekend evening where the officers are doing that. And so it happens probably on a weekly basis. The $700 is the $525 for the impound fee for the violation of the city ordinance, and then there's the tow fee that they have to pay on top of. So
I think part of the issue is, I understand how police work, works in that aspect, but we need to know what other bars are having this issue. That we're not targeting specific locations at specific times. I mean, I want to know, are other places having cars searched in other areas? And there's just definitely an underlying current when people start looking at, okay, you're searching Black clubs. So that's going to be a complaint that pops up when we get these stats and figures. How many people of, you know, of any other nationality has their cars impounded, blah, 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 because everybody has illegal stuff in their cars. But we need to make sure that this is done equitably if it is being done, and not just specific clubs and targeting specific areas.
No, that's a good context, DeMario, because I think that's definitely where I can see the concern are is, you know, we only have essentially 2 Black clubs in Peoria, if we're just being honest, in Status and Dream. And so if the perception is that those clubs are being targeted, that's not going to be good for morale, and that's where the concerns are going to have. So we definitely want to make sure, and I definitely understand proactive policing. You know, I read the article of the young lady who was one of the victims shot at the riverfront, and she's, you know, paralyzed, and she's trying to regain walking and things of that nature. So I definitely applaud the work that the police is trying to do to be proactive so we don't have another one of those incidents. But we also do want to make sure that it isn't looking like that we are, you know, targeting certain areas and targeting certain demographics of people.
Yeah.
So who will be providing the feedback to the complainants?
To the to Miss St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. You say you're meeting with Ms. Harant, but yeah, who will be responding back to her on our behalf?
Can I offer a suggestion? I think this is exactly the type of complaint that we should be investigating, like any other complaint that would come in. So I think it would be good. I don't know, we haven't finalized our complaint review process and our policy, but we discussed having a subcommittee possibly review, prepare a report for the full committee, and then make our decision based on what we found.
So so I think that's a good idea. So I mean, I think that what we can do is if there's, you know, willing people who are interested in following up with Miss St. Louis and wanting to learn more, and, you know, I know that she's advocating on behalf of certain individuals, but it would be good to talk to those individuals. I think that that's important as well too, because they could provide more context. You know, I, like many people on this call, we get reached out to, but we definitely want to empower those who have the issues. I think that's very important as well too. So let's what I can do is if it's okay as chair, I'll reach out to Miss St. Louis and see if she would want to connect us with those who have voiced their concerns, and we can, you know, if some people are interested from the committee and talking to them and just getting some feedback, and then we can bring that back. If they really want to go through the formal complaint process, we could tell them how that goes, provide those forms to them, things of that nature. But I think that's a good idea, Nina.
I think that's a good idea too, but they did say they wanted to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. So I think we need to respect that and ask, you know, if they want her to speak for them, we have to respect that.
Janice, I was about to say the same thing too.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I second that as well, just because, again, retaliation is a real thing. And then as well as, again, they did ask to remain anonymous. But my biggest thing is statistic wise, like Chief Boone was saying, I think, you know, Chief Marion, if you can, you know, provide us with like the locations, like you were saying, and provide us with how many cars were impounded and where exactly they were, impounded, what brought the probable cause. And again, if we can see exactly, you know, each police officer's report for each one being impounded. And then we can, you know, see, you know, I know the name would be redacted, but if we can see, you know, the sex as well as the race of the people whose cars were impounded, that's another thing that we need to see. You know, and then maybe we can try to see exactly, again, compare those statistics to maybe like a Peoria Heights neighborhood or something. And, you know, just pick a random one and then do a statistical analysis. I did that in my major. I had to do a lot of those. So we can try to compare and see, because again, seeing a big disproportionate in the criminal justice system alone. I mean, you can see, how many people are being arrested for, example, so we have male Black who's arrested for, some sort of marijuana, who's in jail, who's told that they're in jail for 30 years, compared to a white man who gets caught with marijuana and it's way less than 30 years. So I just want to be able to, to check the validity of this woman's complaint, and then compare it to, again, the statistics, because again, it's kind of like, this is why police officers can't park outside bars and go already they see someone leaving the bar and drive away. That's entrapment. It kind of, I think Chief Boone kind of was trying to say, like, are you entrapping them just because they are at that location? I'm not, Ms. Patel, if you can maybe talk about, is there any sort of legality with that aspect?
And I would also like Andre to find out if they would be willing to talk without revealing their identity. I know when I worked for the College of Medicine and I used to advocate on behalf of the students, they would talk to me, but I never ever revealed their identity.
Because I think that, and I understand that people don't want to come forward for a multitude of reasons. I get it, but even if we could provide some dates, some time, so then that way, if we ask Chief to look into it, he can look into specific scenarios. I think that that's going to make it a lot easier to kind of narrow this net, if you will, versus him trying to look at 8 months of data at Dream and Status, that. And try to create some report, So I think, again, I don't mind reaching out to her and seeing if they would reach out, if they would, meet with us, or if not, they don't want to, even if they could just provide, hey, on September 2nd at this time, my car was impounded. And so that way we can at least provide some context that we can move forward with.
Yeah,
Or even
thanks
just a
for
phone conversation, or we wouldn't even see them physically.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up, Andre, because I think the initial request is voluminous. I think to go through every single case is just voluminous. If you give me specifics, I'll be more than happy to pull it up and give you the scenarios of it.
I have to attend another meeting right now, but Chief, I would disagree. I don't think it is, because again, we're trying to see statistically, again, the difference. And I get, you're being proactive, but at the same time, how proactive are you being? Because again, I guess, yes, police get to use their own discretion, but again, that discretion goes so far as well. And we want to make sure that everyone isn't being targeted, or just because they look a certain way doesn't mean that they have already a target on their back just because they decide to go enter into one building. That's the issue here.
This is Shalandra. I would agree with Allison. I think that to get the whole picture, we need to know the whole picture. I also think that I also need a point of clarification. Is it only the vehicles that appear to have something out in the open, or is it the vehicles that are parked there? Could that part be clarified?
Yeah, so I was using an example as to what the officers are doing, because like I said, the officers had done that during the year last year when we were having the shootings in those areas. So the officers would walk through the lots, because inside the clubs, the individuals are getting wanded and have to go through metal detectors. So they would leave weapons inside their cars. So the officers would walk through the lots and see if there's anything in plain view. So they're not entering the vehicles or anything like that. They're just seeing if there's anything in plain view. And to Chief Boone's point, they would also do that in the over by the downtown library, because individuals park over there to go to the other clubs, to Diesel and Berlin. Officers would walk that lot as well. So it's in addition to Status and Dream, they're walking the downtown library lot where the individuals would park there as well.
Yeah, and that's the good part. That way, produce this information to the people that are asking. We'll be able to give them stats that says, hey, it's not just 61605. We're patrolling here where other clubs are. And, you know, we'll have more context, because my fear is that we look at this and then we look at how many cars are impounded during a certain time, and every single car is an African-American male or African-American female. And that's going to be a problem. So as long as we show that it's equitably, things are being enforced everywhere, we'll be able to check off that box.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important that we look at all of it. And I don't want to be completely clueless here, but Chief, you said that their car is impounded for a violation of a city ordinance. Is that specifically having a gun in the car, or what is the city ordinance they're violating when their car is impounded? I'm sorry to be so ignorant here.
There's several different things that a car can be impounded for. Driving suspended, driving revoked, no insurance, having an illegal firearm in the vehicle, having drugs in the vehicle, and having open alcohol in the vehicle. All of those are offenses, and DUI. All of those are offenses that the vehicle can be impounded for.
Okay, thank you.
Team, we are in double OT right now, and but great conversations. I think that we are asking the questions that need to be asked, and we're getting context that we need. And I do apologize about us running a little late. And my wife's texting me right now. Today's my daughter's birthday, and she's like, "Where the hell are you at?" So I'm gonna have to get out of here in a second. But before we move on, before we adjourn, excuse me, I know under items for the good of the cause, Chief Boone, you had an event that you wanted to share with the committee real fast, and then I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
Yes, the Don't Start initiative, and I think Chief Marion might know about this also. They're having a program on September 26th at the Carver Center, where they're wanting some of his officers. There are a couple of my officers. I think Park District is going to be involved, but they're wanting to get people from the community and officers to partner up, play basketball, play bags, just basically some camaraderie. I told them that I'd also present this to the board, but they did say that they're going to have a capacity limit, of course, of 50 people. But I'll get more information as this comes closer. But they said it's on September 26th at the Carver Center, and I'll get times and stuff like that.
I've got 2 other events that day.
No, that's great. And I think I have class that weekend, but I'll definitely come after we get out around 2 or so via Zoom. So no, that's great, Chief. If you can forward that to us, that'd be good. I know War Muhammad reached out to me yesterday. I need to follow back up with him. He's part of Don't Start. Him and Joe Corey, they're doing some great things using their platform with music to educate our youth. So they're definitely doing their thing. At this time, though, I will seek a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please, Miss Christina.
Andre Allen,
Yay.
Chief Boone,
Yay.
Sandra Birch,
Yeah.
Allison Galvin, Nina Gugis,
Yay.
Lorraine King,
Yes.
Chief Marion,
Yes. Yes.
Karen Wilson,
Yes.
Janice Zagardo.
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, overtime has adjourned, but great meeting you all. And let's continue to keep connecting offline. We can get things done outside of these meetings as well too. So I think some of the conversation that we had at the end is great context, and let's follow up with Chief Marion about that offline, and then maybe we can maybe he could present a report at our next meeting about some of the things we talked about today. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.